Hi, and welcome to my channel where I make dishes inspired by some of my favorite video game characters. Today's dish is inspired by Velvet from Odin Sphere. Odin Sphere was the first Atlus game I ever played, and I didn't play it until the remaster came out in 2016. I was so enthralled by the art style of the game and immediately became a ride-or-die vanillaware fan, playing any of their games I could get my hands on. Odin Sphere was just an absolutely perfect storm for me, and it's one of those handful of games that I'd love to play again for the first time if I ever got my memory wiped. Again, the art is so breathtaking, the setting is so beautiful, the characters are intriguing, the gameplay was addictive, and the story was captivating. I truly felt like I was playing a fairy tale I had read as a child, in the most perfect version, where I not only got to see what was happening, but I got to control it as well. I love all of the playable characters of Odin Sphere, but I definitely found myself drawn towards Velvet. I always think chain-based weapons are so cool because they seem so hard to master and control, so anytime someone uses them, their coolness factor shoots way up for me. Velvet was so beautiful and strong, but also so gentle and kind. I loved playing her side of the story and seeing her relationship with Cornelius and her brother Ingwe. It was so sweet to see that even with so many rumors being spread about her and being called a witch, Velvet never let the horrible words get to her, and she simply proved to others how kind and honest she was through her actions and words. When coming up with a dish for Velvet, I knew I wanted to make something sweet because of the adorable Maury's restaurant figure where she is enjoying a sweet little cake. For this dessert, I was inspired in a dish shaped by two conical things: her red diamond ciphers and her red cone hat she wears. Velvet is such a warm and mature character, and her colors remind me of the warmth I get when I eat apple pie in fall. Apple pie filling also is a warm golden color and matches her hair color well. I felt like red Napple Cornets would be a perfect dessert to represent her, and I had a blast making them. Here's what you'll need to make your own. For the cornets themselves, you'll need active dry yeast, bread flour, granulated sugar, salt, 2 large eggs, 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter cut into small pieces and softened, and red food dye. You also might want some sugar ice cream cones and aluminum foil to help you shape and mold the cornets later if you don't have cream horn molds. For the apple pie custard filling, you'll need whole milk, 4 egg yolks, granulated sugar, cornstarch, cake flour, cinnamon, unsalted butter, vanilla extract, and apple pie filling. We'll start the process by preparing our cornet dough. Grab a small bowl and add in 2 tablespoons of warm but not hot water. Mix the yeast and water together and let it sit and bubble for about 5 minutes. As the yeast and water interact, grab a large bowl and add in 2 cups of bread flour, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Whisk everything so that the dry ingredients are well distributed, and then once the yeast mixture is ready, pour it into the center of the flour. You'll whisk everything briefly, as it will not be fully combined. Your mix will just look like it has a few little lumps and clumps inside, but it will still be mostly dry. At this point, grab a liquid measuring cup and add in 1 large egg. Add in some water until the egg and water together measure a half cup, and then lightly beat the egg and water until mixed. Next, stirring pretty constantly, add the egg and water mixture to the dough bowl, and once the dough starts to come together more, switch over to kneading with your hands instead. Knead for just a few minutes until the dough begins to stick well to itself. You'll then add in your pieces of unsalted butter and about 5 drops of food dye and continue kneading until the dough starts to form a smooth ball. It will be a little sticky as you work the dough, but it will slowly come together, and it's okay if the red coloring is not completely uniform. Once the dough is nice and smooth and passes the window pane test, toss it back into your large mixing bowl and cover with plastic wrap. You'll let the dough rise in a warm place until it about doubles in size, which will likely take around an hour. I've recently heard a helpful tip when proving your dough is to stick a large dish into your oven with hot water, so feel free to try that if you'd like. After about an hour, you'll know your dough is done by how it responds to a poke of your fingertip. It should be ready if the dough holds an indentation after poking, and it's not ready yet if it springs right back. Now, while your dough is doing its first big rest, it's a perfect time to make our apple pie custard filling. Start out by grabbing your apple pie filling and measuring out about a half cup's worth of it. Puree or smash the apple pieces inside until they're about bite-sized, and then reserve for later. We'll then grab a large mixing bowl and add in 4 egg yolks and a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. Whisk this mixture until it's combined, and then head to the stovetop to start heating a small saucepan. Into the saucepan, you'll heat 2 cups of whole milk until the milk is hot but not bubbling. This should take a little over 5 minutes, and once it's hot, turn off the heat. Return to your egg mixture bowl. Add in just a splash of the hot milk and mix until combined. We'll then add in 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of cake flour, and a half teaspoon of cinnamon. Whisk again until well incorporated, and then while mixing constantly, slowly add in the rest of the hot milk to the bowl. Once the eggs and milk are thoroughly mixed, use a fine mesh strainer or sieve to strain this mixture into a medium saucepan. Now you'll start heating this saucepan on medium heat, and you'll whisk constantly so that the eggs don't burn. You'll whisk and cook until the custard thickens, which will happen pretty quickly and should take about 5 minutes. Once the custard is nice and thick, remove the pan from the heat and add in 1½ tablespoons of unsalted butter, a half teaspoon of vanilla extract, and your half cup of apple pie filling from earlier. Mix and whisk all of these ingredients until the butter melts and everything becomes well incorporated. We can then use a rubber spatula to transfer the custard to a medium bowl and cover the bowl with plastic wrap. When covering, make sure that all surfaces of the custard are touching some plastic wrap. This should help to avoid a thick skin developing on your custard. You'll then place the bowl into the fridge to chill until the cornets are ready to fill later. Speaking of cornets, once the dough has officially finished rising, you'll turn the dough out onto a lightly floured surface and divide the dough into 12 equal pieces using a scraper and a scale to help you. We want these to be as even as possible so they all look uniform and bake evenly. With each section of dough, you'll form a nice and taut little ball. You'll then line 2 baking sheets with parchment paper. On one of the baking sheets, place all of the 12 dough balls with just a little bit of space between them. Grab a large kitchen towel and wet it with warm water, and then wring out the water until the towel is not soaking, just damp, and then cover your baking sheet with the towel. Let these dough balls rest for about 15 to 20 minutes. While they rest, this is a good time to make your cone molds if you don't have cream horn molds. I ended up making some changes to this recipe after I had made it the first time, and I had used ice cream cones and it worked just fine. To make your molds, you'll grab your sugar cones and cover with a small square of aluminum foil. Fold and mold the aluminum foil tightly around the cone, making sure that the small and pointy end is fully covered. Once all molds are ready, lightly butter the surfaces of the molds so that the dough does not get stuck later. Around this time, your dough balls should be done resting. Grab one ball out from under the towel and leave the rest of the dough covered as you work. Working one at a time, roll out each dough ball into about a 13-inch long rope. You can roll it out with your fingers and whip the rope around to stretch it out, like you're making a pretzel. Once the dough is long enough, you'll wrap the rope of dough around the mold, making sure that there isn't a hole at the pointy end of the mold, and then pinch the dough together to seal the cornet. Place 6 of the cornets onto each baking sheet with the seam side down, and then cover with plastic wrap to allow the cornets to puff up slightly. The cornets will rise for one final time for about 30 to 45 minutes. Once this timer is almost up, start preheating your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and once it's preheated, there's just one more step before it's time for the oven. Whisk an egg in a small bowl, and then brush the egg wash onto the tops of each of the cornets. Once the surfaces are covered, we can then slide the cornets into the oven to bake for about 13 to 18 minutes until the cornets are starting to get a more golden color on the top of their red, and the dough is cooked through. Once done, we'll transfer the cornets to a wire rack to let them cool. We'll keep the cornets on their molds to cool until the molds are safe to remove, which should take around 10 to 15 minutes. We can then take the molds off and allow the cornets to continue cooling until they're completely room temperature. And when they're room temperature, all we have to do is fill the cornets. Mix up your custard just so there's no longer any large clumps, and then fill a wide piping bag with your apple pie custard, filling each cornet up generously. At this point, it's time to serve and enjoy. This dish takes some work and time, but it's definitely worth every second and can be such a fun experience to bring together. The cornets themselves are so soft and buttery with that nice and flavorful crust on the outside. The apple pie custard filling is creamy, cool, and it has just the right amount of apple pie flavor to fill you with that comfort of fall. The textures of these two components together is so enjoyable and harmonious, and the bright red and pinkish color of the pointed cornets is beautiful and charming just like Velvet. I get the feeling that Velvet would feel really drawn to these cornets for not only looking like her trusty cipher chain, but because they would be so delicious. I could see Maury making these for Velvet to snack on at his traveling restaurant between harsh battles, and it would give her the comfort she needed. I could also see Cornelius learning how to make these to impress Velvet and to have a sweet treat to offer her on a stressful day. They would help her take her mind off of her awful grandfather and would remind her of the more enjoyable and carefree aspects of life, like walking through Elrit Forest with Cornelius or Ingwe. With Armageddon looming near, she'll take any moment of respite that she can, and she'll try and savor every last bite before she has to grab her cipher chain and head off to battle. The recipe card is in the video description if you'd like a more quick and concise version to give it a try. Like if you want a bite, subscribe for more geeky treats, and comment what foods Velvet reminds you of. Thanks for following along.